Rogue One, A Star Wars Story marks the 8th live-action film in the franchise. And 4th prequel, if you count the 3 that came before it. Which you should, because they absolutely do count. We can never escape them. This is canon.
Please don't look at me like that.
Why not?
It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Sorry, milady.
However, this time around, instead of focusing on the birth of Darth Vader, plus whatever Dooku was doing and about, the idea was to take a few lines from the original Star Wars opening crawl, namely, rebel spies managed to steal secret plans to the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star, all caps, and then build an entire narrative around that. As a result, this movie has been called, by Disney CEO himself, Bob Iger, an experiment to see if there's any interest in expanding the universe beyond that of the Skywalker story and tell self-contained narratives that whilst don't culminate in the ultimate showdown between good and old. So old! Look at this guy! How does he walk around like that? He looks just horrible. But yeah, what was it? Okay, so yeah, these movies aim to expand the universe by focusing on the little people or smaller adventures that previously were just, footnotes in the history of the galaxy and largely forgotten, but nevertheless played pivotal roles. Now to me, this gamble has largely paid off in Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Hate the name, it's hard to say, and a large part of that is superb casting. Felicity Jones continues the proud tradition of having a brunette female as one of the leads, bolstered by a great international cast that feel for the most part like real people who just happen to exist in this fantastical universe. The story here, as evidenced by the trailers, is that the Death Star plans must be retrieved in order to exploit the structural weakness that becomes very apparent in Episode 4. And whilst the first act is a little meandering and a little choppy, more on that in a bit, the final third really kicks things into gear in a way we haven't seen since Return of the Jedi. I can't emphasize this enough. The space battles are spectacular. And this is one of the moments that really highlights how much fun Gareth Edwards is having in this universe, seamlessly blending new and old concepts to incredible effect. And the same goes for the final ground assault. The aim of this movie was to make the battles feel Saving Private Ryan in nature, gritty, real, dangerous, and that goal is absolutely achieved. In the other films, I'm never really too concerned that any of the leads will be shot or die in a horrible explosion, but here, there's this constant sense of dread that anyone can go at any time. Because for the most part, the majority of characters that we see here don't show up in the next film. So realistically, all of them are entirely expendable. So when the blaster fire is kicking up sand and Imperial troops are bearing down on the rebels, it doesn't feel lighthearted and fun. It's quite harrowing, but in a good way, if you can be harrowed to such an extent. One thing that Edwards does really well, and if you've seen his Godzilla remake, you'll know this, is scale. The sense of size we get from not only the Death Star, but Imperial ships, walkers, even certain characters, has never made the Empire look more menacing. Like this terrifying force that only an idiot would try and oppose. Idiots like the Rogue One unit in which the title refers to. There's a couple of standouts, in particular Donnie Yen as a blind martial artist, and Diego Luna as a rebel who deals in the morally grey area we never experienced with previous protagonists, even with hand shooting first. Because this is a guy who will shoot you in the back if he's ordered to. And that grey area is one of the strengths of this film. We're used to this idealized version of the rebellion, with princesses and farm boys going up against the might of the Empire. But this movie highlights that both sides are willing and definitively prove that they'll do terrible things to accomplish their goals. The expansion of the universe is also a lot of fun. This is a time period that we're very familiar with, but the inclusion of locations, both new and old, are very welcome. Worlds like Jeddah. Yes, it's another desert planet, but the on-set locations and diverse extras and animatronics make it feel very much like a living, breathing community. And the places we return to, the Rebel base on Yavin 4, the Death Star control room, other things probably, I don't know, it's late when I'm recording this, they're so faithfully recreated that you'd be hard-pressed to distinguish between what was shot 40 years ago and now. Well, I say that, but obviously there's a little more polish on this modern version considering the budget that this movie has. There's also a number of returning characters. In some cases they are recast, like Mon Mothma, who's actually played by the same person that we see in a Revenge of the Sith deleted scene, and other times recycled footage is employed to connect this with other movies. In a couple of cases, CGI is used to recreate actors entirely, as they aren't able to reprise their roles for reasons I won't get into for fear of spoilers. In one case, the result is pretty solid. Not flawless, but good enough to the extent where if you didn't know, you might not be able to spot it. And the other is brief, but real wonky. When I saw it, I felt like I tripped, broke my leg, and rolled into the bottom of the uncanny valley. But again, fear of spoilers, I'll just leave it at that. The references on the whole, they're really laid on thick. Often it's just a throwaway line, or a quick shot of something like blue milk. Sorry if you consider blue milk a spoiler, and then the story moves on. But other times, it's like everything grinds to a halt, and it's almost like the film turns to the audience with a bit of a wink and a nod and goes, Star Wars, hey? You liked Star Wars? Remember this from Star Wars? But these moments are few and far between, and I guess it doesn't bother me too much, considering I do like Star Wars, and yes, I remember Star Wars. This movie, for the most part also, is quite inspiring, whether it be the selfless decisions made by characters in the film, and along with that we get some pretty rousing speeches. But at the same time, it's probably one too many, and the word hope is said a total of 47,000 times. Along with that, like I mentioned earlier, the first act, it's a little meandering, and yet at the same time it quickly jumps from world to world in an attempt to let audiences know, okay, these are all the characters you haven't met, this is what they're about, this is this planet, it's known for this is a different planet, it's known for a different thing, everyone on board? Okay, good. To assist with this, for the first time ever, title cards with locations are used in order to keep everyone watching up to date, something Star Wars films haven't employed before. This may be a result of reshoots in an effort to streamline the narrative, because if you've seen the trailers, you'll quickly realize that there's quite a bit missing from this movie. Reportedly, huge changes were made to the story. Now, I don't think for the most part this is made to the detriment of the film. It all makes sense. It is far from a Fantastic Four situation, and if I hadn't seen the trailers or been keeping an eye on the reports, I may not even have noticed. But like I said, the whole thing does take a while to kick into gear. Last thing before I wrap this all up. You might want to know how Vader fares in this film. Personally, I would have liked to have seen more of him, but what we get, incredible. And I'll leave it at that. As far as a definitive score for Rogue One goes, I'm gonna give it a, why do I keep doing this? I don't have a rating system. All the information you need comes right before this. This part here means nothing. You can just skip it. I mean, you don't have to, it's your call, but there's no information here of value. There will be after, because I've got some other stuff to say, but all this, meaningless. A waste of time. I should have edited it out, but I haven't. Out of 10. Now, ranking Rogue One in terms of the Star Wars films is something I don't really want to do. I've only just seen it and haven't had the opportunity to allow it to sink in. Plus, my opinion on the other movies shifts on a near constant basis. Plus, everyone's opinion is different, and I'll most likely cop a lot of grief for drawing a line in the sand in terms of what I prefer. So yeah, like I said, I'd rather not make a definitive list. Now let's do it! Star Wars ranking time! Yeah! Okay, not surprisingly, it's Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones down the very bottom. I respect what Lucas was going for. I mean, he made the exact films that he wanted to, but having watched them recently, those movies they're so dull, and there's just endless conversations regarding events and people I just wish would all get bundled into a spaceship and shot into the sun. Just above that is Revenge of the Sith. Not a great film, but I did enjoy it at the time. I particularly like the first 10 minutes. It's really something. And I like some of the stuff that happens in the middle, and then I really like the bit at the end where Obi-Wan robbed his alleged best friend and left him screaming in agony at the edge of a fiery, fiery pit. Above that is Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. Both movies I really enjoy, though I do like them. The faults to me are very apparent for different reasons. Jedi really sags in the middle, but the opening and closing acts are nothing short of spectacular. Awakens, it retreads a lot of old ground, but I think it did a great job of relaunching the franchise, but I am hoping to see a more original narrative in Episode 8. Above that we got Star Wars, the original Star Wars. It's classic, formative, a pinnacle of filmmaking, but above that for me, like most people, is Caravan of Courage, an Ewok adventure. Just a joke, that's just a funny joke, don't worry about that, don't take that seriously. It's really Empire Strikes Back. Rogue One, at this point for me, fits in about here. Now it doesn't have the luxury of leaning on characters we know and love from the original trilogy, so obviously there's the nostalgia factor that it can't rely on, though it is nostalgia heavy in its own, more in-jokey kind of way. It also has better battle sequences, and I do admire the story it's trying to tell, but it doesn't seem to flow as well as The Force Awakens. Basically, in some ways it's better, and in others it isn't, so for now it's here, but I'll have to give it a few more views to give it a concrete position, and by that I mean a position I'll likely change on a regular basis. Alright, that's it. Now because YouTube is run by a big old building full of butts, the new algorithm means that leaving a like and a comment might help this video become more visible, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know how it works. Actually, if you're going to leave a comment, I'd love to know what your thoughts on Rogue One are and where you rank it in terms of the other Star Wars films. Also, this Monday on my podcast, The Weekly Planet, we are discussing Rogue One in one huge, spoiler-free, then spoiler-heavy review. That's linked below if you want to check it out. And right there on the top right, that's a video where we attempt to defeat Darth Vader in a series of video games across time. Both of those things mentioned are they're real fun things. But I do appreciate you watching this. Thanks so much. Take care.